It should come as no surprise that many of the people that enjoy our content are fans of retro games. I'm at the age now that many of the games I liked growing up are now considered retro. Gaming is still in its infantile stage in the grand scheme of things, but there's over 60 years of history there, and that's plenty of time for us, as fans, to decide what the classics are, and what particular games define a genre or an era. Even if you didn't live through those periods, you still might be a fan. I know quite a few people who are in their late teens or early 20s who enjoy games that came out before they were even born. Retro gaming is for everyone, and it's one of the most popular scenes in the gaming world. From memorabilia to fanfiction, old games are in vogue. However, playing games from the past isn't always easy to do. Sure, there are plenty of emulators out there, but that's an immoral practice that not everyone is willing to participate in. I'm not judging you if you emulate, and I plead the fifth on the entire practice, but I do know that some people prefer to play old games as they were originally intended to be played. Problem is, that's not always possible. I went about 10 years without playing Empire Earth, one of my favorite games as a kid, because I couldn't find a version of it that was compatible with the laptops that I was using in college. Eventually, I bought a real PC and was able to play it on good old games, but it was a very long wait. I still can't play this one particular game that I miss right now because my PS3 died and the PS4 doesn't have backwards compatibility. The point is, sometimes we really miss a game we used to play and can't play anymore. That's why this video exists. It's a history and a shout out to one of the most creative and, for lack of a better word, cool companies to exist in the gaming industry. This is a video about Nightdive Studios. Enjoy! Most game studios set up shop to try and create their own vision. They spend some money, come up with a fresh idea, pour their hearts and souls into their project, and hope that people will buy their game. Steven Kick took an entirely different path in his career as a game dev. Steven is the creator of Nightdive Studios, a company with a goal to bring lost and forgotten treasures back from the depths. Kick founded Nightdive back in 2012. Before that, he was working as a character artist with Sony Online Entertainment, and his job was all about helping other people bring their games to life. He was burned out and unhappy. He loved helping create games, but his role at Sony left him feeling unfulfilled. So he decided to take a trip to help reinvigorate himself. A trip to wherever, a trip to find some sort of inspiration. Like us, Steven was an avid gamer, so of course he brought along some stuff to play while he toured. A fan of the classics, he decided one night that he wanted to play System Shock 2. One night, I was playing, or attempting to play, System Shock 2, and I couldn't get the game running. I went online, attempted to purchase the game on GOG, and I discovered that there was no legal way to commercially buy the product. So, I did some digging, and discovered that the IP had been transferred to an insurance company after Looking Glass Studios had gone out of business. After finding out that the IP no longer belonged to Looking Glass, Kick decided to take the initiative and find out what he could do to get access to one of his favorite games. So he approached Meadowbrook Insurance Group, the company who had purchased the IP, with the idea that System Shock 2 could be re-released on GOG, Steam, or any other digital storefront that people shopped in. That's pretty much the story of how Nightdive was born. It's a simple one, but it's also revolutionary. Steven Kick wanted to play System Shock 2, and, unlike most people, he didn't just give up and decide that he couldn't play it because it was too old. Instead, he found a way to get it re-released. That's the type of go-getter attitude that characterizes the majority of the success stories in the gaming industry that we cover on this channel. After the success of System Shock 2, Kick decided it would be a good idea to look into other older titles that were worthy of a re-release. Our inspiration really lies in all the games that we grew up with and that we remember fondly, Kick says, and our desire to replay those games, preserve them for future generations to enjoy, and just to continue, I guess, the stewardship of making sure these games are available for everybody to play again. In 2013, Nightdive released updated versions of I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream, Wizardry 6, 7, and 8, as well as the 7th Guest and the 11th Hour. In 2014, they released 28 more titles and tried to get the operative No One Lives Forever republished, but that game is an absolute mess and nobody knows who owns it. Seriously, watch our video on it. It's one of the most interesting stories in all of gaming. Just Google the best game you can't buy because it's all mind-blowing stuff. Anywho, because that game's ownership is such a mess, Kick couldn't get all of the companies involved to cooperate and Nightdive struck out on getting getting it re-released. 2014 wasn't a total failure though. It was the first year that the studio participated in Humble Bundle. During May, Humble sent out a package that included every game that Nightdive had reacquired, encouraging people to go back and play all of those amazing retro titles they couldn't play anymore or that they might have missed out on. One thing to note about Nightdive is, even though they haven't worked on many original IPs, they have to meet a completely different but equally daunting set of challenges when working on these old games. They've not only made these games playable on newer systems, they've also made them better. Their work on Turok 2 is a perfect example. They wanted the game to be played on any computer, even low-end laptops like the ones I was using in college that I referenced earlier. Larry Cooperman, the director of business development, says, "It's interesting. We worked in cooperation with Intel, using their toolsets. Intel provides a variety of different software tools to optimize your game performance. One of the things we found with the Intel set, we were able to make sure that Turok 2 would play on the widest spectrum of computers available, so that if you wanted to fire up Turok on your laptop on the way home, it would play smoothly." So they've been able to de-optimize and re-optimize all of these old games to make sure we get to play them, while also making visual improvements. With Turok, he points out that computers in the 90s couldn't render long viewing distances, so devs would use tricks to make it harder to see far in front of you. Turok used fog to create a shorter viewing distance so they could make everything in front of you look better visually without players noticing that they couldn't see far away. These days, that type of thinking isn't necessary, so Nightdive changed the game to improve the graphics. "We were able to roll back the fog and give the game a whole new visual treatment," Cooperman explains. "These are not games that are intended to compete with the highest end, highest requirement games out there, but visually, they are certainly appealing." What I really like about these guys is that they are genuine and they really care about old games. It wasn't long ago that the CEO of Sony said people aren't interested in playing old games. Aside from the fact that he's a hypocrite for saying that, it also just isn't true. Old games do matter, and people certainly want to play them. The re-release of the PS1, the SNES Mini, etc., shows that there's money to be made there and there's a huge market for retro gaming. Nightdive believes in that vision so much that they not only make sure that people get to play classic titles that they otherwise wouldn't be able to, but they also get to play improved versions of them. They do this with a lot of hard work and with an innovative approach to development. The studio and its teams work in a virtual office, meaning they don't clock in and see each other face to face every day. They don't crunch or get overwhelmed with stupid meetings. They work in a modern yet effective way. Development happens on pretty much a 24/7 basis, with tools like GitHub and Slack enabling collaboration and communication across the team. Nearly everything they do is done using software. So even though you don't have to come into the office, you have to show that your work is getting done and that your projects are staying on track. I like to point this out because it's really cool that this studio is recreating old games in the most modern of ways. Nightdive also gets to pursue their goals without having to deal with publishers all the time. A lot of their work is crowdfunded, so they don't have to worry about EA, Activision, or Disney screwing them over or making them change their games at the last minute. I don't know anything about how to actually make games, but if I was a developer, Nightdive sounds like a company that I wouldn't mind working for. That's a refreshing realization because a lot of the research I do on the history of these studios is saddening and even infuriating at times. I don't get that vibe with Nightdive, and it feels like they operate in a very positive way. Thanks to platforms like GOG and Humble, they also get to put their games in front of consumers without the hassle of a publisher either. This is a studio built on and around self-starters, people who are passionate, smart, and responsible, that allows them to take the lead in their own journey. As Cooperman says, a developer can be relatively self-sufficient and come to the publisher saying, "Look at what I've produced so far. Is this something you'd be interested in?" So you have all those things out there. You have a very robust ecosystem for games development now. Nightdive is certainly taking advantage of that. In the past couple of years, they've released Turok 2, Space Rogue Classic, Tender Loving Care, Titanic Adventure Out of Time, and Metal Fatigue. Are some of these games weird? Well, sure they are. But part of Nightdive's vision is to get people to play games that were forgotten as well as games that were remembered. So I'd give many of these titles a chance. They also have Doom 64, Power Slave, and Machines Wired for War in the pipeline, so their work isn't finished yet. Turok 2 is coming to the Switch soon, and they're still working on a remake of the original System Shock, as well as System Shock 2 Enhanced Edition. I recently played System Shock, and my god, does it need to be remade? Because it's really tough to play. And that's why I like Nightdive. I'd love to see them remake other stuff as well. Games that didn't age very well, but were amazing when they were originally released. I can't leave this video without pointing out that Nightdive isn't without its flaws. It's pretty messed up how slow the development is on this System Shock stuff, especially considering that people paid their hard-earned money to back it, and the studio went on a hiatus to reevaluate the company. Stephen Kick is aware of this though, and he claims to be more transparent these days. He says, "There's definitely some pressure, and a lot of it has been alleviated through transparency within our community. We give them the platform to express their disdain or love. A lot of what you see is a direct result of what's worked on for them and for us. Part of that is due to the fact that the work on System Shock really is a labor of love for them, and it's easy to tell." According to Cooperman, Nightdive is trying to remake this game, not the way it actually was, but the way that you remember it being. I like that, and I like Stephen Kick, and I like Nightdive too. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look at one of the most unique studios in the gaming industry. If you did, be sure to share it on Reddit. Every share helps us grow. Thanks for watching, and, as always, I'll see you guys on the next one.